From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, fuel subsidy to gulp 3.36 trillion naira in 2023, according to the federal government's budget proposal for next year, as the country's debt profile hits $102 billion. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, rallies support for flood victims, calls on other presidential candidates to suspend campaigns for the cause. And federal government debunks rumour of an agreement with the Republic of Cameroon on the construction of dam to check flooding. On business news tonight, the Nigerian exchange records triple-digit loss in 3 straight days as the all-share index falls to the 44,000 level.
On sports news tonight, the National Council on Sports approves the exclusion of para-sports from the 2022 National Sports Festival, despite protests by the para-athletes on their exclusion from the Games.
And from the capital of the nation, federal government plans 10 billion naira fund for tech startups in the country as the president signs the Nigeria Startup Bill into law.
And in international news from London, the local Russia-installed leader says tens of thousands of civilians and Russian-appointed officials are being moved out of Ukraine's Kherson region ahead of a Ukrainian offensive.
Fuel subsidy payments will cost the country the sum of 3.36 trillion naira in 2023, as has been provided for in the budget proposal by the federal government. Also, the sum of 470 billion naira is provided for the revitalization of universities and the upward review of salaries of university lecturers. This is according to the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, in her presentation of the breakdown of the 2023 budget in Abuja today. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, has more.
Weeks after President Muhammadu Buhari presented the 2023 appropriation bill to the joint session of the National Assembly, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, gives a breakdown of the document to the public.
Presentation of the 2023 executive budget proposal.
She begins with the performance of the 2022 budget, explaining that the aggregate expenditure for 2022 is estimated at 17.32 trillion naira, with a pro rata spending target of 11.55 trillion naira at the end of August 2022.
The actual spending as at the end of August is 9.56 trillion. This is about 83% of the prorated target. And of this spending, 3.52 trillion was for debt service, 2.89 trillion was for personnel costs and including pensions, while 1.78 billion was released for capital expenditure.
In the proposed 2023 budget of 20.15 trillion naira, petrol subsidy is expected to gulp over 3.36 trillion naira as the federal government struggles with a debt profile of $102 billion.
In the 2023 budget, we had assumed that PMS subsidy will remain up to the middle of 2023. Based on the 18 months extension that was announced by government early 2022. In this regard, only 3.36 trillion has been provided for PMS subsidy for the year 2023. Overall, the budget deficit is 10.78 trillion for 2023, and this represents 4.78% of GDP. Again, this is higher than the 3% that is set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The budget deficit is to be financed mainly by domestic borrowing as well as foreign borrowing. Domestic borrowing at 7.04 trillion, while foreign borrowing is at 1.76 trillion. The total debt portfolio of our country today is at 102 billion US dollars. Of the total debt size, 35% is foreign, 65% is domestic.
Meanwhile, a look at the critical sector allocations in the proposed budget shows defense and security sector has the highest with 13%, followed by education with 10%, health takes 8%, infrastructure 5%, and social development and poverty reduction has 4%.
Okay. This is the last budget under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, and according to the Minister of Finance, it will focus on critical macroeconomic and fiscal reforms to spur critical investment in healthcare services, climate change, and job creation for youths and women. But across this hall, there are palpable concerns on Nigeria's debt profile under the administration, even though the government has continued to allay fears that the country's public debt is still within sustainable range. Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
And to the ravaging flood in the country, the Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, has debunked the claim of Nigeria entering into an agreement with Cameroon to build a dam to check flooding whenever water from the Lagdo Dam is released. Mr. Adamu says there is no record of such agreement, and Cameroon did not inform Nigeria about releasing the water from the dam until 24 hours after it was released. The minister was speaking during the budget defense with the Senate Committee on Water Resources.
MD of Upper Niger. There are so many stories circulating in the media and so on that Nigeria entered into an agreement with Cameroon to build a dam, that's in Hausa. I have checked the records of the ministry. Nothing, there has never been anything like that. That's in Hausa, along with Kashimbila and the entire tributaries of River Benue have been identified as, you know, they're tributaries of River Niger, of River Benue that have not been dammed. And that is why River Benue constitutes the major source of flood from the confluence downwards. Lagdo Dam releases the flood, its contribution to flood in this country is only 1%. It took a lot of effort for us to get them to sign an MOU for them to be informing Nigeria about releases. Even this one, they told us when he called them, when he saw that the rains were, I was communicating with the DG NISA. I said, what's happening in Cameroon? He said he has been calling them. They said they have not released any water. Finally, they said, okay, that they will inform us tomorrow. They didn't inform us. They informed us 24 hours after they had released the water.
Meanwhile, more assistance is coming for victims of flood disaster in Anambra State as the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, handed over some relief materials to the state as part of efforts to reduce their hardship. The NEMA Southeast Zonal Coordinator, Mr. Thikman Tanimu, says over 450 local government areas in 36 states of the Federation, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, is affected by the ravaging flood.
We have been desilting and cleaning up drainages everywhere just to let runoff water to be able to get to the river, as it were. But now the water from the river now coming on to overwhelm one-third of the state, even a little more than one-third of the state.
Anambra State Governor Professor Chukwuma Soludo speaking on Channels Television Sunrise Daily on the flooding that has wreaked havoc in Anambra East and West local government areas. Just hours after he paints that devastating picture, the National Emergency Management Agency is here with some food aid from the Strategic Grain Reserve to be distributed through the Anambra State Emergency Management Agency for flood victims in the 28 holding camps across the state.
Minister of Humanitarian Affairs.
This is in addition to many other items, including toiletries and clothing materials.
Let me say that the federal government, through NEMA, cannot compensate the traumatic experiences of persons affected by disaster impacts. Yet, we have to help people alleviate their sufferings with this federal government approved relief item. To ameliorate the suffering of the affected persons, the federal government has approved the delivery of the underlisted materials.
This support from the federal government is appreciated as it will shore up efforts by the state. But much more will be needed to cater to the needs of the growing population of displaced persons.
What they have said to us is very timely. We have too many people, too many mouths to feed at the camp. And this thing they have brought will make the people happy tomorrow when we start our distribution.
The State Deputy Governor, Dr. Onyeka Ibezin, gives assurances that the distribution will be done appropriately.
It's quite large for us to bite, and some NEMA is coming now. And yes, they brought some relief materials before, which we have our distribution pattern. You know, we know how many we are, we know the communities, we know where our centers are, so we don't have any problem in distribution.
While the emergency challenge persists, Governor Chukwuma Soludo is advocating for a long-term solution to ensure that flood victims are adequately settled in the aftermath, while the federal government initiates moves to tackle the annual flooding disaster on a permanent basis.
Staying with the flood, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, is urging other presidential candidates to suspend their campaigns and join in lending a helping hand to flood victims across the country. Mr. Obi made the call after visiting Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State at his Abuja private residence, where he discussed modalities on his planned visits to flooded areas in Benue and other states.
Nigeria is greater than all of us, and we must work hard, irrespective of our political differences, to ensure that we build a better Nigeria for our children. I came because of this flood issue. As you can see today, flood is ravaging the entire country, and people are dying. People are being displaced. I personally stopped and told my people, no more campaign until we're able to visit some of the sites, at least sympathize with those who are going through problems. And I came to take his permission to ask him that I want to visit some of the sites in Benue, as I'm going to do in 1 or 2 other states. I'm also calling other presidential candidates to stop. Let's see what we can do. If we can buy our funds for millions of naira, we should have some little things to go now that people are suffering and say, at least show sympathy with them, and then we can continue.
Governor Ortom, on his part, is asking Nigerians to elect the best presidential candidate among the top 3, one who is hands-on and a detribalized leader to restore hope, development and progress.
The front runners of this 2023 presidential election are 3 of them, from the PDP, my party, the APC, and the Labour Party. But let us look at these 3 people who has the capacity to deliver and to make things work for our country, Nigeria. Let us look at it. Let us be factual. Let us be frank with ourselves, because we are toying with our future. A country of over 200 million people deserve a better leadership that is proactive, that has foresight, that has vision to make things work for our country. I look forward that these 3 candidates of the various political parties will meet and say, look, let this man go. I'm in PDP, and I'm working for PDP, but I tell you, if I were not in PDP, you will see me working for Peter Obi.
In part two, after the break, we'll bring you more stories and politics as the PDP governorship candidate in Lagos is reacting to Governor Wike's endorsement of the Lagos State Governor for a second term. Plus, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, promises to strengthen the capacity of people living with disabilities in the 2023 general elections. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Fuel subsidy to go up 3.36 trillion naira in 2023, according to the federal government's budget proposal for next year, as the country's debt profile hits $102 billion. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, rallies support for flood victims, calls on other presidential candidates to suspend campaigns for the cause. Federal government debunks rumour of an agreement with the Republic of Cameroon on construction of dam to check flooding. And thousands of civilians and Russian appointed officials moved out of Ukraine's Kherson region ahead of a Ukrainian offensive. Politics now, where more reactions continue to trail the endorsement of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's second-term bid by Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State. The latest is from the PDP governorship candidate in the state, Mr. Gideon Adediran, who sees Governor Wike's decision as unbecoming of a party leader. He maintains that he is not the least worried, considering the fact that he won his governorship ticket despite the obstacles before him. Mr. Gideon Adediran was a guest on Politics Today.
How can somebody who didn't support me with all his might within the PDP while seeking the party ticket who think he's got that magic wand to take a decision for generality of Lagosians? Okay, because during the primary, I came into the party. Of course, when I came into the party, was one of the governors that came to receive me. Came to receive me because of the can-do ability they've seen in me, what I brought into the party in Lagos, which I appreciated. But I did that not with a naira of his. Absolutely, he supported the party in Lagos during my coming, but not me. I've planned everything before Governor Seyi Makinde actually introduced me to him. So, and during my primary, he didn't buy my form. He was supporting somebody else in Lagos because he needed structure to win. I don't have that structure. I came in with nothing. They've done all the structure.
That's in the PDP?
In the PDP before my coming. So because of that, and I said to him, because Governor Seyi Makinde were together, and I said, Your Excellency, this is your friend. You are my leader. But your friend is not supporting me in Lagos. I said it before him to his face, and I repeated it when we went to Port Harcourt. But that was before primaries. And I said he was supporting somebody else. And we understood why he was doing that, because I don't have anything at that time. But today, I picked that ticket with all his might within the PDP. And I'm the candidate of the party today. So I don't think I've done anything wrong to inform him bringing such a treatment in Lagos. And I see how APC was jumping up and about because of that. If for anything, that brought us a lot of sympathy, because you would say you would never expect that a party man, a governor of a state in our party for that matter, a national leader, will come and do that for any reason at all.
Staying with electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is promising to strengthen the capacity of persons living with disabilities to participate in the 2023 general elections. Speaking at the flag-off of a sensitization campaign in Abuja, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, explains that the commission is working to ensure that their rights are protected. The campaign, which will be taken across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, is an initiative of the Albino Foundation.
The voting right of persons with physical challenges is the focus of conversation here as the Albino Foundation launches a campaign to mobilize persons with physical challenges for the 2023 general elections.
The process is here. The opportunity is staring at our face. We must rise up to the occasion, take the bull by the horn, and ensure not only do we vote, that we will also be voted for.
The person with disability in Nigeria can determine who is going to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, because of that, I'm just calling my noble colleague. Let us join our hands together. Let us look at who are we going to vote, so that we cast our vote, so that we know we give our contribution to the Nigeria, so that collectively we see what contribution the person with disability of Nigeria is going to give the society in general.
According to the National Population Commission, 19 million Nigerians live with some form of physical challenge, and according to INEC, 16% of this figure is expected to participate in the process. Though INEC is worried about the systematic exclusion of persons with physical challenges in the electoral process, the Commission wants to end all barriers.
The introduction of the assistive devices such as the Braille ballot guide, magnifying glasses, and posters for the deaf were all products of our engagement with the disability community. And in implementing the provisions of Section 54 of the Electoral Act, will continue to engage with the disability community, without which the Commission cannot provide the appropriate interventions needed to facilitate their full participation in the electoral process.
Beyond participating in the electoral process, the conversation here is that government at all levels need to pay more attention to the welfare and the security of persons with physical challenges.
We have more stories from our Abuja studios. Hi, Terry Kumi. It's over to you.
Hello, Millicent. More on election matters. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, is asking Nigerian students to participate fully in the 2023 general elections by voting for candidates based on their records. He said this in Abuja while welcoming the executive members of the National Association of Nigerian Students, led by their president, Usman Barambu, to his office at the National Assembly, adding that the students cannot afford to be detached from the process of electing the next president, as the future of the country is at stake. The Speaker urged the students not to overlook any of the other candidates besides the 3 frontrunners in the presidential race. Now, a University of Uyo lecturer, Professor Ignatius Uduk, who is standing trial for alleged electoral malpractice, was today rushed out of the Akwa Ibom State High Court 4 after he collapsed in the dock. The incident occurred when the prosecuting counsel, Clement Onwenweno, was concluding his cross-examination of Professor Uduk, who had rejected all entreaties to sit in the dock. It prompted the court to go on recess, while the wife and daughter of the accused moved him to a yet-to-be-disclosed location for medical attention. Professor Uduk is facing a 3-count charge bordering on announcement of false electoral results when he served as returning officer for Esianudim local government area during the 2019 general elections. The case was later adjourned till tomorrow, October the 20th, for continuation of trial. Now, if you have been looking forward to an enabling environment for tech-based startups in Nigeria, you may now have a reason to be cheerful, as the president has signed into law the Nigeria Startup Bill, which was initiated by the executive and passed by the National Assembly on the 20th of July 2022. Based on the provisions of the law, the federal government plans to set up a 10 billion naira fund for startups in the country. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umezuke, has a report.
Affirming his promise to boost ICT in the country, the president meets with the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy in a brief ceremony in his office, where he signs the Nigeria Startup Bill into law. Explaining the huge benefits that would accrue from the 2022 Startup Act, including tax holiday incentives, Mr. Pantami revealed a 10 billion naira fund among several other incentives to advance digital economy.
Mr. President has assented to the bill and also conveyed to the relevant institutions of government for gazetting. And the approach we adopted was to allow our young startups, our young innovators all over the country to identify the challenges they were being confronted with when it comes to intellectual property, financing, regulation, incentive, among many others. The minimum at the start, based on the provision of the law, is 10 billion naira.
He says as a pioneer approach to dealing with inherent hiccups in the innovative sphere, a Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship Council, to be chaired by the president, would be set up.
There is going to be a presidential council which has been entitled as National Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship Council. Digital innovation and digital entrepreneurship are the two prerequisites to digital economy. So there is going to be a council, and this council is going to be chaired by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the vice chair is going to be the Vice President of Nigeria.
He further explains that the act will minimize the controversial issue of harassment of youths carrying laptops by law enforcement agencies.
In some states, because if you are going around with a computer, you will be detained. And some people will allege you are a Yahoo boy. This is a problem. With this council, when President directs, nobody will say no, they must comply. I hope you understand. So the issue of funding is not even the major issue they complain about. The major issue, let that enabling environment be provided. Let them be honored and be recognized instead of being harassed because of their ideas.
The ICT sector and digital services has so far contributed in the second quarter of 2022 a GDP of 18.44%. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, the Nigeria Exchange records triple-digit losses in 3 straight days as the all-share index falls to the 44,000 level. That's on Business News. Stay with us. Welcome back to the news at 10. Let's return to the National Assembly now, where the chairman of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions, Senator Ayo Akinyelure, says the committee has summoned the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Mr. Umana Okonumana, over allegations of abuse of office. According to Senator Akinyelure, a petition before the committee alleges that the minister was also accused of trying to replace the sole administrator of the NDDC, Mr. Efyongakwa, who was duly appointed by President Muhammadu Buhari and confirmed by the National Assembly, as well as sacking over 700 staff of the NDDC. Well, that's all we have from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Terry. The Director for Employee and Industrial Relations in the Office of the Head of Service of the Federation says while it is the legitimate right of every worker to associate with a trade union and picket their employers, such actions must be done within the ambit of the law. Speaking on the third day of the Pengassan Energy and Labour Summit in Abuja, she also urged the trade unions to explore more dialogue during disputes.
Train a woman.
It's a day dedicated to women in the oil and gas sector as the Pengassan Energy and Labour Summit enters the third and final day. The major issue on the front burner is the rampant casualization of workers in the sector.
I recall that I think about sometime last year, we had a case in one of the oil servicing companies, and the National Assembly invited to Federal Ministry of Labour to come and assist them in a case of public petition. And this were a group of workers who claimed that they had worked in a particular organization for upwards of about, in some cases, 20, 30 years. And at each point, they will be passed on to the other, such that after 30 years, of course, they were looking for terminal benefits, Abi, and then it became a controversial issue. And then they asked us from Federal Ministry of Labor to come and provide guidance as to how they will resolve the matter. And you know, I found it very interesting when one of the management staff trying to describe or defend their position, I think she said something like, oh, we just passed them to another person, they didn't want to use an employer, another agent.
The national president of Pengasan frowns at the conditions of service in some organizations in the sector, which is a major reason for picketing by the labor unions.
One of the greatest constraints that trade unions has passed through in Nigeria is because our institutions are weak. In other climes, it is difficult as an expatriate for you to get paper to even work in some certain countries. In some certain countries, the terms of engagement between the employees and the employers are well spelled out, and government agencies, they enforce them to the latter.
As the 2022 Pengasan Labor and Energy Summit winds down, it is expected that major issues discussed like oil theft, staff welfare and motivation, as well as government labor relations, will get the needed attention, just as all stakeholders have participated in the activities.
And now to health. The Marcel Ruth Cancer Center and Specialist Hospital in Lagos has organized an annual advocacy campaign. This is to mark the Breast Cancer Month. The occasion brought together women as a cancer specialist talked to them about breast cancer. According to the Chief Executive Officer, early detection in women and men impacts heavily on the outcome of treatment. October every year is set aside to draw attention to cancer prevention and cure and the need to support cancer patients.
Decided to arrange what we call a breast care day rather than breast cancer day, and it has included teaching people about how to examine their breasts properly, when to do it, how to do it, the importance of screening, when to start screening, how long to screen for, and in particular making the point that if you have a family history of breast cancer, then normally you should start screening at age 40. But say you had a cousin or your mother's sister who died at age 40, then in that family group, the screening should start 10 years before what we call the index case, before the person who had breast cancer, whether they survive or not. And that's a big message that people don't seem to be aware of for any woman and man, because breast cancer does also occur in men, although it's rare, who finds a lump in their breast, that they should ensure that they seek medical attention, particularly if the lump has come outside their normal menstrual cycle, and also if it persists for more than 3 or 4 weeks, and they really should get some attention to it. But at the end of the day, if everybody has the annual screening done, then we're more likely than not to pick up these cancers early and therefore ensure that people will survive better.
Away from health, as part of efforts by the Kaduna State government to stimulate the agro-value chain in the state, the governor, Nasir El-Rufai, has commissioned an ultra-modern fertilizer blending plant and a center of excellence in Chukun local government area. The plant was built by fertilizer production giant OCP Africa. Speaking at the event, the governor commended the management of OCP Africa for what he describes as a signature investment.
The efficient use of customized fertilizers is one of the best ways to increase farmers' productivity and ensure food security. To provide these high-quality fertilizers in the Nigeria agricultural space, OCP Africa, a subsidiary of OCP Group, has in the past 6 years, with its local partners, sponsored several research and development projects, which have resulted in the formulation of bespoke fertilizers recommendation for different crop types in Nigeria. The company has built a fertilizer blending plant in Chinkun local government area of Kaduna State, equipped with modern facilities.
This facility is not just about blending fertilizers, but about profoundly impacting the country's agricultural value chain. OCP Africa is committed to contributing to the transformation of food system in the continent, and Nigeria bears strategic focus for our company.
Sitting on 10 hectares of land, the fertilizer blending plant has a production capacity of 120 metric tons per hour and has warehouses for storage, a training center, farm and production units.
Our production unit is composed with 5 micronutrients and 3 micronutrients that are very essential for the agriculture in Kaduna, based on all the research and development that we did with our partners. We have
OCP locating a fertilizer blending plant and center of excellence within Kaduna State also expand the access that our farmers have to fertilizer supplies and agronomic support. It helps to improve the availability of an essential ingredient for farming, as well as support our farmers to be more productive.
According to the management of OCP Africa, the fertilizer blending plant in Kaduna State is not just about blending fertilizers, but about profoundly impacting the country's agricultural value chain by working hand in hand with farmers to help grow the agricultural potential of the African continent through solutions adapted to local conditions and to the needs of soils and crops.
It's now time for business news. Here's Anne Wilder.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. The federal government has directed telecommunication companies to reverse the 10% unilateral tariff increase on voice and data services to prevent the hardship it might impose on Nigerians. In a statement signed by the Director of Public Affairs at the Nigerian Communications Commission, Mr. Ruben Moka, the reversal has become necessary as the tariff adjustments did not have the final approval of the Commission. The NCC adds that it seeks to carry out further consultations with all industry stakeholders on how best to protect the interest of both consumers and service providers. South Africa's inflation rate has slowed slightly for a second straight month. According to Statistics South Africa, the headline consumer price index fell to 7.5% in the month of September year-on-year from 7.6% recorded in August, while core inflation rose to 4.7%, coming from 4.4%. Statistica Africa also says the main drivers of inflation in September were food and transport. Experts believe a slowdown is unlikely to stop the central bank from raising interest rates in the month of November. Now let's head to the equities market, where it fell again further today after the trading session, notching a 3-day losing streak as Airtel Africa struck again. Jeffrey Uzongo has the details.
Hello and welcome to Stock Market Report. It's day 3 of trading at the NGX, and of course, looking at the all-share index dropping further by another 2%, closing below the 45,000 level it held just yesterday, and the bear strikes again. Well, the deals and the volume, looking at the activity chart, right there in the red, and the value still holding off in the green, showing that there's a lot of sell pressure. But looking at the gainers counter, we see that Fidelity Bank is up by 9.74%, closely followed by Jais Bank with 7.06%. But on the flip side, on the third day, yet again, Airtel is down 10%, closing right there at the end of trade, 1,312 naira. What's going on in the market? Well, it's 3 straight days of losses, just 2 days left in the trading week. Can the bull make a comeback? That looks tough. It's a big question. That's the stock market report. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. It's back to you.
Well, we'll find out tomorrow. Thank you, Jeffrey. Now let's take a look at closing numbers from other markets around the world. And that's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Millicent.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, and to some international news now. The head of the Russian-occupied region of Kherson in southern Ukraine says pro-Kremlin administrative officials are transporting people away from the regional capital to the left bank of the Dnipro River ahead of an expected offensive by Ukrainian forces. Simon Pusi has more on this and other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The Russia-installed local leader says tens of thousands of civilians and Russian-appointed officials are being moved out of Ukraine's Kherson region ahead of a Ukrainian offensive. Vladimir Saldo said 50 to 60,000 civilians would leave 4 towns on the west bank of the Dnieper River in an organized gradual displacement. All Russian-appointed departments in Kherson city would cross the river too. Russian TV footage showed Kherson residents, some of whom took pets, gathering near the Dnieper River, queuing for boats. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared martial law in the 4 regions of Ukraine that Moscow annexed and gave additional emergency powers to the heads of all regions of Russia. Putin didn't immediately spell out the steps that would be taken under martial law, but said his order was effective starting Thursday. His decree gives law enforcement agencies 3 days to submit specific proposals and orders the creation of territorial defense forces in the 4 annexed regions. A large crowd at Tehran airport has greeted an Iranian sports climber who competed without a headscarf in a competition in South Korea, calling her a heroine. A crowd of well-wishers cheered, clapped and chanted, "Elnaz is a heroine" outside the terminal building at Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport. 33-year-old Elnaz Rekabi broke Iran's strict dress code, but later said her hijab had fallen off inadvertently. Many are skeptical about the reason she gave in a state TV interview at the airport. Iranian women are required to cover their hair with a headscarf and their arms and legs with loose clothing. Female athletes must also abide by the rules when they are officially representing Iran in competitions abroad. Iran is currently gripped by protests against the hijab laws and its clerical leaders after the death of Asa Armeni, a 22-year-old woman arrested by morality police in Tehran on the 13th of September for allegedly wearing her headscarf too loosely. The UK Prime Minister has said she is a fighter, not a quitter, in Wednesday's Prime Minister's questions.
Mr. Speaker, the only mandate she's ever had is from members opposite.
It's after the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, called on Liz Truss to resign for crashing the economy, asking the PM, why is she still here?
Show for it, except the destruction of the economy and the implosion of the Tory party.
Ms Truss apologised for the mistakes she had made as she faced MPs for the first time since almost all her tax cut plans were ditched.
I am a fighter and not a quitter. I have acted in the national interest to make sure that we have economic stability.
Kenya's Maasai herders are struggling to keep their cattle alive in a severe drought, with some animals selling for 70 times less than previously. Livestock are central to the traditional Maasai way of life, not only as the main source of food and income, but also as a marker of social status. But Kenya, along with neighbouring Ethiopia and Somalia, is experiencing its worst drought in 40 years, with 4 consecutive rainy seasons having failed to materialise, wiping out livestock and crops in some regions. Aid agencies say food and vital supplies are needed urgently to stop the crisis from worsening. And a helicopter paramedic training to fly an Iron Man-style jet suit to get to mountain rescue casualties faster has flown in strong winds and rain for the first time. Jamie Walsh, an emergency paramedic with the Great North Air Ambulance Service, has been helping to test the technology's suitability for use by paramedics while learning to fly. The test flights in England's Northern Lake District, supported by Danish renewable energy company Ørsted, took place in heavy rains and winds gusting at more than 30 miles per hour.
Yes, I've been involved with the jet suit programme for about a year or so now. It's been going really well. We've had probably about 8 or 9 days worth of training to get to a point now where we're in a position to actually reach a casualty on a mountainside in Cumbria is really exciting, and it's a really key day-to-day to be able to do that in the difficult rain, wind conditions, because obviously in Cumbria it rains and it's windy a lot, so yeah, it's went really, really well.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The National Council on Sports has approved the exclusion of 3 compulsory para-sports that includes para-athletes, para-powerlifting and para-table tennis from the National Sports Festival, despite protests by the para-athletes on their exclusion from the Games. The decision was taken at the virtual meeting held earlier today, where the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development say it had in April this year organized a National Para-Games where 16 para-sports were competed for by 21 states. The Council also approved the inclusion of cricket in the Games, scheduled for November the 28th to December the 10th in Asaba, the Delta State capital. This year's Games will include 3 demonstration sports: netball, tekball and mixed martial arts. The president of the Nigeria Football Federation, Ibrahim Gozo, has rated the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium in Benin City, the Edo State capital, as world-class, and assures everyone that the Ogbe Stadium, as it's fondly called, will host matches involving all the national football teams. Mr. Gozo gave this assurance when he led some of his executives on a courtesy visit to the Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, at Government House. Mr. Obaseki charged the new NFF boss on improved funding for football in Nigeria. He added that the board should take stern measures in dealing with cases of violence and indiscipline in Nigerian football. And in the English Premier League, Chelsea extended their unbeaten run to 7 games under Graham Potter after a goalless draw against the battling Brentford side this evening. Well, Newcastle United underlined their top 6 credentials by beating Everton thanks to Miguel Almiron's 5th goal of the season. Well, Darwin Núñez extended Liverpool's revival as the Uruguay forward maintained his own recent resurgence with a decisive goal in the 1-0 win against West Ham United at Anfield. Well, Manchester United produced a thrilling attacking performance to deservedly defeat Tottenham Hotspur 2-0 at Old Trafford. And that's a wrap on Sports News. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun. It's back to Millicent.
Thank you, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The federal government today said the sum of 3.36 trillion naira has been provided for the payment of fuel subsidy in the 2023 budget. The Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, who presented the breakdown of the budget, added that the sum of 470 billion naira was also set aside for the revitalization of universities and the upward review of salaries of university lecturers. That's the news at 10 to 9. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Pomoka. Have a good night and stay safe.